So we have been talking about love for the last, 10 weeks? Hard to believe. Time flies when you're having fun. So we have said love is a decision that we make. I am going to love you, whether you like it or not. I am going to seek your highest good. And sometimes that's not easy. We want to say love is a feeling. But as Titus 2 verses 4 and 5 says, teach the young women to love their husbands and to love their children. That is a taught thing. It doesn't come naturally sometimes. Sometimes you don't actually feel like getting up at 3 in the morning to feed your baby. Sometimes you don't feel like doing the right thing. But guess what? If we love people, that's what we will do. We will seek to do the right thing. So we are down to chapter 11, the joyful servant. Love rejoices in the right, and love does not delight in evil. And so it's from 1 Corinthians 13 and verse 6. Translated in different ways, and you can see there's a lot of differences here, how this one was translated. Sometimes translators will pretty much hit along the same lines, but when you see this diversity in the translations, you know, well, there might be something else to think about. And so it's a good idea to check different translations. Just to kind of get a feel for it. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. And they're kind of along the same lines. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. And we'll talk about this as we go along. ESV verses 9 through 11. Notice what this says. Notice how many times in this section, if you ever read this, notice how many times the word abide shows up. I want to say it's like 11. I didn't check that, but it's like a lot of times the word abide is going to show up. And here Jesus says, as the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide or continue in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you. Listen, that my joy may be in you and your joy may be full. Is Christianity a joyful religion? I've had people say, well, I'm not very joyful because I don't have a silly grin on my face. Come on. Is that really what it's talking about? When it talks about joy, having joy in your heart, it's going to be, I'll just kind of cut to the chase, it's going to be more of a deep inner contentment, happiness, that's not going to come from the worldly things, but from the Father that made us. It's going to come from his things. You can have all the riches, all the pleasure in this world, still not be happy. You can have zero pleasures in this world and still be happy, still be joyful. The secret is not out there. I told my kids when they were growing up, secret's not out there. Joy doesn't come from out there. It starts right here. And most of the time, it's how you decide to handle things. People are in different situations. Some can come up and they're happy about not the situation, but they have the inner contentment. They have inner peace that the world can't give you. What's he say? I have spoken that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. Full joy, not half measures, okay? Did you ever see the movie Pollyanna? If you haven't seen it, it's on the Disney. Old movie, and you ought to watch it. There's a preacher in there. He did hellfire and brimstone sermons, and buddy, they were rip snorters, one of them called it. When was the last time you heard a rip snorter? Even that word describe anything. But the people would have indigestion, when they'd go to have lunch, they'd have indigestion because the sermon was so harsh. Well, Pollyanna, of course, is the main character, and she wants him to find some of the verses that talk about joy. And it kind of changed that whole congregation. And so, anyway, that's your homework. Go watch a movie. You may have heard of Jonathan Edwards. He preached a sermon in 1741 called Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. Did you ever hear of that one? I asked Alexa if she could quote it, and she could not. I was sad about that. I would like to hear her talk about that. It's written out. It's a long sermon. You can look it up. Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. Well, he had people dangling over the pit of hell on a spider's web and just waiting for God to snip that web off, and they would be lost. And the people were shocked. They were crying out for mercy. People fainted when they heard that sermon. Anybody ever faint when you preach? 500 people were converted that day. Well, sometimes you need a hellfire and brimstone sermon, but not a steady diet of it. Nobody wants that. Sometimes, God uses different motivators. Sometimes fear of punishment may get you up off the couch and doing things. My mom and dad, they would tell us to do something, and after a while, you needed the fear of punishment to get you to do it. Yeah, they weren't afraid to use all forms of motivation, and guess what? The Lord's the same way. Sometimes you use a carrot, and sometimes you use a stick, as the saying goes. Well, Christianity really is a joyful religion. But what do? Satan, we've said before, can only take good things and corrupt it. So what does he do? He dangles out pleasure in front of us. Here's wealth, here's sex, here's, worldly things. You think, my pleasure must be here. But guess what? That's empty promises. Satan uses the bait and switch. He he dangles out the, whatever he's putting in front of you, but it's an empty promise. That's not happiness, all right? He can only take what God does and corrupt it. Now, what God offers is true happiness. My joy may be in you. What do if you follow what he does? God made us. He knows what will make us happy. He made us. He knows not only happiness now, but what? In eternity. And that's really what we want. So Christianity, God invented joy for us. He wants us to be happy, but not in these worldly things, in eternal things. All right? So don't get those confused. But, of course, what did the old preachers say? People come to church look like they were weaned on a sour pickle, and they, and, they're just very sad all the time. And, that's, one extreme. And the other extreme is, well, you need to sit there with a goofy grin on your face. Well, as we've said before, it's neither one of those. It's somewhere in the middle. Well, love does not rejoice in iniquity. Love is not happy with iniquity. Let's move on. So there's Pollyanna, there's Jonathan Edwards. Christianity is joyful. I see I even put a little smiley face there for us. Where do we get our joy from? Is it from what Satan offers? Well, of course not. God wants us to be joyful or full of joy. Well, how do we react to wrong is going to be the question. In previous chapters, we've focused inward. Love is patient, love is kind, love is not puffed up, all this. Okay, now we're looking outward at others. And, how do we react to that is kind of how that's going to go. Love is never happy when others do wrong. Say, now I've got him. Now I've going to put them down. Moffat, in his translation, says love is never glad when others do wrong. Philip says love does not gloat over the wickedness of other people. Why do we do that? Do we think if somebody else is bad, that makes us better? We kind of look down on somebody. Well, I've got sin in my life, but I'm not as bad as this person right here. Does that really kind of build us up? Does it make you feel better? Yeah, we tend to do that, don't we? Well, there's always somebody that's worse off than I am. He's just a degenerate. Isn't that what the Pharisees did? Lord, I thank you, I am not like that tax collector. Does that make him feel proud that he's not that bad? Is he puffed up? Does that kind of raise his level up? Well, of course not. Love does not rejoice in iniquity, and that's what that's about. All right, rejoicing in faults. And here we look at the church in Corinth. What were they all about? They rejoicing in the sins of others was not too strong a word. In Corinth, they were competitive in worldliness. They were jealous, boastful, and arrogant. They had problems. Every congregation has problems. You think Oak Hill has problems? Well, we can look down on Corinth, okay? At least we're not as bad as those guys. They had problems as well. And it's a spiritual smugness. Oh, I've got this made, I'm better than them, is kind of what we're talking about. We must be careful who we allow to influence us. We may be just, spiritually smug and looking for a leader. Who do you allow? And that was a problem there in Corinth. Paul says, I hear there's a man living with his father's wife. And, even the pagans, man, I would never do that. The pagans know better than that. And you guys are bragging about it. Come on, is what he's saying. Is there wrongdoing? Does that give me some advantage somehow? Does it make me look better? Does it make me feel spiritually superior to someone else? And that's the idea of being spiritually smug. They were competitive in worldliness. They had it all turned around. Why do we rejoice in the wrongs of others? It may give us some advantage. Well, now I can do this if he does that. Something like that. It may make me look better. We've talked about being spiritually smug, and we may just be looking for a leader, somebody that will lead us in whatever it is. So this idea of rejoicing in evil, not good. How did Jesus react to this? Luke 19:41, and when he drew near and saw the city, he wept over it. People talking about Jesus doing some of the things that Jesus did. Well, he flipped tables, so that puts that in a thing that I can do. I can get angry and flip tables. Well, you can't get angry and flip tables until you first weep over the city. because that's what Jesus did, all right? He wept at the sins of others. He says, how many times have we sent prophets to you, O Jerusalem? And you've ignored them. You've turned your back on them. You've killed them. All these things that they did to the prophets. This is the reaction we should have over the sins of others. When you watch the news, man, they only put bad news on there. Good news doesn't make the news, right? Steady diet of news is what? It's going to bring you down. You can't watch that all day. It will hurt you. But what? The reaction we should have over sins is sadness. Man, they are so worldly. And we should want them to find the right path, to find the way. Rejoicing in evil contradicts God's purpose for sending Jesus into the world. Why did Jesus come to the world? What did Paul say? Jesus came to save sinners, of whom I am chief. Wow. That's what Paul's attitude was. You start seeing other people's sins. What do you need to look at first? Look in the mirror. James says we need to look in the mirror and see our own sins first. I've got this log in my eye and I'm trying to help you with the speck in your eye. Get that log out first. You know that. That's not a new lesson for us. We need to be reminded of it sometimes. God calls us to serve, not to be selfish. Think about this. If your whole life is focused on you, what makes me happy? What gives me pleasure? If your whole life is focused on that, will you ever be happy? You won't. I'll tell you right now, you don't have to do that. I'll just tell you. If you're only focused on you, you will never be happy. But what? If we focus on others, if we serve just like Jesus did, what did he do? He went about doing good, it says in Acts. How do you sum up your life? If you sum up your life, he served himself from day one until the day he died. That's not what Jesus wants. That's not going to give anybody eternal happiness. And especially you. You'll never be happy. All right, that's how that goes. God calls us to serve, not to pursue life selfishly. God calls us to seek people's highest good. That's what love really is. We want to deliver someone from Satan's control. That's our goal. We're seed scatterers. Now, he's the Lord of the harvest. And we get discouraged because we don't get a harvest sometimes. We scatter in seeds and we feel like it's not doing any good. What? We're not the Lord of the harvest. He's the Lord of the harvest. And we do what we can. We teach, encourage, and try to spread the word. Sometimes the seed falls on good ground. The other times it falls on rocky ground or on the path, and it's eaten up by the birds. Satan steals those seeds away. So we're looking for that good ground. But God calls us to serve. I want to go to heaven, and I want you to be there as well. You know, I've said that to a lot of people, and nobody has ever gotten angry at me for saying that. They don't ever argue with that. I want to go to heaven. I'd love for you to be there too. How do you want other people to react when you sin? You want them to be happy when you sin? Well, of course not. Matthew 5:4, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. It's not just being sad about a situation or about a death. It sometimes includes being sad about sin. You will be comforted. All right, let's move on. I've got 2 lessons to do, and I've already used more than half of my time. How do you want other people to react when you sin? And then you think about the Beatitudes. Mourning includes the sin, mourning, sadness over the loss or other people's sins. Love rejoices in the right. Love deals with human relationships. Now, here's a rule about human relationships. It is core to what we're doing, and it's also very messy and awkward. I like sitting at home in my lazy boy chair. I don't like going out of the house because outside the house it's too people-y. And I don't like dealing with people, right? The older I become, the more introverted I get. Is that normal? I don't know. I don't like dealing with people because why? People are messy. Here's a rule. Everybody's got baggage. And you look at somebody, they look like they've got it all together. They've got baggage just like you do. Everybody's had problems. Everybody's had messy relationships. They didn't end well. Everybody is in that same boat. And, some people handle it better than others. And some of us don't handle it at all. We just kind of mess all over the place. And, that's just, it's just very obvious with some people and not so obvious with other people. Do you ever notice that? Rejoice in the right. When people decide to do what's right, that's when we rejoice. We rejoice in our victories, and we're sad in our losses. And every day we get up and we try again. That's the joy that we get here in this life, but it's also an eternal joy. And so we are drawn to Christ. People are strengthened. We rejoice when we get to extend God's love to other people. You want to see the happiest time in a person's life? Go up and look at a baptism. And we've got the baptistry way up there, and it's hard for you to see. When people are baptized, that is a blessing just to see the look on their face. And you don't always get to share that when you're way out here in the audience or you just hear about it. But that's inner joy right there, and it just kind of shines out. All right, we have joy in the church. We are drawn to Christ, and we want to draw other people to Jesus. That's our goal in life. When people are strengthened, when people see God's love come alive in their life, we want to see people grow spiritually, and we are sad when they fall down. Love does not rejoice in evil. Our moral actions is more than just keeping laws. It's more than just, obeying rules. It's putting Jesus in our life. I think Jesus was a pleasant person. He was happy, and he had tough times, but people were drawn to him. People wanted to be around him. The Bible says the poor people heard him gladly. And, some people, they can draw people in. How does that even work? And that's something we need to try, get out of my lazy boy. And, most of these lessons I have to preach to me first before I teach to you. And these two were kind of hard. I have to preach to me. I'm not always my best student. All right. Lesson 12, the enduring proof. And this is looking at 1 Corinthians 13 and verse 7. And if you look at that verse, love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. And that's something that how do you know you're loving? Well, right here is what you're doing. You're doing these four things. Always hopes, always bears, believes, trusts, hopes, and endures. And yeah, that these are hard things. Different ways this is translated, and you can kind of look at those there. Mostly bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. And you could say love does this thing. And that would be translated just fine. Always protects. Now, the idea of bearing is one thing, and the idea of protecting or covering is another definition of the word, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So that's kind of how this is going to go. Bears, believes, as in trusts, hopes, and endures all things. So the root word of this word, first word, bears all things, the root word is to cover. And you think, well, that's really kind of an odd thing. And so love does not ignore all things or deny. We don't ignore sin. We don't deny sin. We don't deny that there's sin in the world or in other people's life or even in my life. That's denying reality. But also love does not advertise. It does not rejoice at wrong. All right? To bear up, to hold out, to forbear threatening circumstances. Sometimes bearing up under pressure is the hardest. What you thinking? Right? That's pretty common saying. You know, sometimes we get the attitude, I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm glad. It's kind of the way I've heard it. And, you know, that's the wrong attitude, okay? And if we feel like, or if other people feel like we're exuding that attitude, we need to change how we present ourselves. We should never be glad when someone else is wrong. We should rejoice in the truth. All right, so two definitions of this word. One is to bear up, to hold out, to endure, and the other is to cover. And so let's think about the idea of covering first. Usually we think of the second definition of forbearing, but let's think about the first definition. And, you know, I just wanted to spend just a minute. There's never, well, I won't say never. Sometimes there's not just one definition. I heard the other day that the word in English, R-U-N, run, has hundreds of ways that it is used. And, you know, you can probably think of several just off the top of your head. And, you know, you go into like the big dictionaries that's way thick, they'll have hundreds of definitions for that one word, run. Well, this word has two definitions. How do you take it? One is to cover. And you think, well, that's kind of an odd thing. We'll talk about that. And the other is to forbear, to endure, that sort of thing. So let's talk about the first one for just a minute. Love covers. It bears all things. And so two possible applications. Moffat, in his translation, says, love is always slow to expose. So it's using that definition of covering. Love doesn't open up and show everything. And sometimes you have to, but it's always slow to do that. It's a decision and not a knee-jerk reaction. Does that make sense? It's something that's done deliberately and not in the heat of the moment. So the idea of gossip. Let's hold that for a minute. Sometimes elders may need to publicize sin. And, you know, we're really not, I've never seen that done properly. I've heard of congregations that have done it improperly. And, we say the word reprove, rebuke, and exhort. Well, you can reprove and exhort all day long. We're not real big on rebuking, are we? Rebuke, we don't do that very well. And there's times you need to do that in a loving way. So the idea of gossip, the bottom line is check your motives. Is this going to help or hurt? Whatever you say. And, love bears all things. It holds out. It endures. I don't know where that went. There's gossip. I'm backing it up. How did I miss that? Did you hear this? Gossip is devastating. Sometimes you have to tell things, but, you look at 1 Corinthians 5, verses 1 through 5. Paul vigorously opposed evil. He would name names when he's writing letters. Demetrius has left me, having loved this present world. He named Demetrius. What do you know about him? Well, just that one thing. Paul was, though, he was inspired, and we are not. Can I stand up and name names? Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not inspired, for one thing. That's not my mission in life, to call out people. I hope to never do that. In 1 Corinthians 5, beginning in verse 1, Paul said, "It is actually reported there is sexual immorality among you, and of a kind that's not tolerated even among pagans, for a man has his father's wife. And you are arrogant. You ought not rather to mourn. Let him who has done this be removed from among you." And that's the idea. Be careful who you let influence you. Be careful. Don't just let anybody come in here and influence the flock. That guy needs to be removed. "For though absent in body, I am present in spirit, and as if present, I have already pronounced judgment on the one who did such a thing. When you are assembled in the name of the Lord, and my spirit is present with the power of the Lord Jesus, you are to deliver this man to Satan for the destruction of the flesh." Why? "So that his spirit may be saved." What's the goal here? The goal is not to put down anybody. The goal is not to suppress, make anybody, hurt just because I'm kicking them out. The goal is what? To save his soul. That's our motivation. That's where we should start, and that's where we should end, so that his spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord. Of course, Paul, he could say this. Why? Because he was inspired. And sometimes I could use a little inspiration. How do I deal with this? And sometimes I just don't know. What's the best thing to do? Where's wisdom when you need it? Where's inspiration when you need it? And it's hard. It was shameful for a man to be living with his father's wife as his wife. Even the pagans wouldn't even do that. The pagans would say, "What are you doing?" So Paul instructs Timothy about people that persist in sin. There it is, 1 Timothy 5:20. He says, "As for those who persist in sin, rebuke them in the presence of all." Why? "So that the rest may stand in fear." If we never call out people's sins, what are we going to think? The rest of us think, well, must not be a big deal. If they can do it, why can't I do it? If they're not going to call that out. And we see it with kids. You let one get by with something, pretty soon the whole group is doing that. Angie, when she was teaching, she said, don't smile till Thanksgiving. Well, why? Because by the end of the year, they're going to run all over you. Well, you got to be careful what you allow. Why? It's going to influence the whole group. As Christians, we need to be concerned about the whole flock. And so it may be time, man, we got to get rid of this guy that's influencing the flock to save the flock. And, that's an awful, awful thing to do. It's hard, and we don't do it very well. Why? It's relationships, and people are messy. That's why. All right. Our main goal is to save sinners. And even if we call people out, our goal is not just to call them out. Our goal is to save them in the long run. So love doesn't expose evil. It covers it up sometimes. Sometimes you need to be slow to speak, slow to anger. But then there's other times that you need to speak up, call somebody out. Sometimes a brother may need to admonish a brother. Sometimes I may need a good kick to get me going in the right direction. And I may need you to deliver the kick. And as we've said, I think like the last 4 or 5 Sundays, it's a balance. It's not all one way and it's not all the other way. And it's hard and it's messy and it's awkward. Sometimes we need both sides. So there you go. That's all that. Let's move on. Are we helping or hurting is the idea. When should we bear? When should we cover? Sometimes we need to publicize the sin. Sometimes we cover it up. Some people argue if you don't expose another person's sin, you're as guilty as they are. Well, where does love does not expose sin? It's a balance, is the idea. Check your motives. Are you doing this to help or to hurt? Is the bottom line. And it's hard. And so all this whole section, these are hard things. This is something we grow toward, is it not? Rather than something that, well, it's easy. Anybody can do that. Anyway, love holds out. Love bears all things, endures. This is the other definition. We endure. 1 Corinthians 9:12, if others share this rightful claim to you, do not we do even more? Nevertheless, we have not made use of this right, but what? We endure anything rather than put an obstacle in the way of the gospel of Christ. Sometimes we have to endure hard things to help other people. And that's hard. We don't like to endure hard things. It's hard. And we endure hard things. Why? To help other people. 1 Thessalonians 3, verses 1 and 5. Paul's on his second missionary tour with Paul. He is going from Berea to Athens. He sends Timothy to learn their faith for fear that somehow the tempter had tempted you and our labor would be in vain. He's concerned about people that he'd already converted. He's concerned that they weren't enduring, that they were ready to give up. He knew his own loneliness, frustration, discouragement, and other problems would be intensified when Timothy was there. But he was willing to bear them because he wanted to know about his brethren in Thessalonica. Love is concerned with the relationships of people, all things. We bear all things. Not just some of the things some of the time when I'm in the right mood. We bear all things. And, of course it's a balance. Sometimes you give up and you just say, I can't do that. I can't help that person anymore. And then other times, buddy, you keep trying. You try one more time. Paul endured loneliness, frustration, discouragement, but what? He was willing to bear this for the people, for other people. Love is concerned with relations between people. The fruit of intolerance. Corinth neglected this. 1 Corinthians 1:11. They were intolerant. But what kind of problems did they have? They had a boatload of problems. They were jealous of one another. They were puffed up proud against one another. They were not willing to bear with brethren. They were even taking other brethren to court and, ready to sue them over things. Well, come on, you're going before a pagan court to deal with spiritual things. That's just bonkers. What? You suppose Paul would ever use the word bonkers? Loving endurance is tough. The dispute and disagreement are not necessarily wrong. You're going to be dealing with people. You're going to have disputes. You're going to have disagreements. And you're entitled to your own dumb opinion. Of course, my opinions are always right, of course. Your opinions are always dumb and wrong. And isn't that how we do? But what? We can disagree without being disagreeable. Can we not? Ideally, we can. You ever talk about, what do you not talk about in dinner parties? Politics and religion and, all these things. Why? Because people disagree about them so much. Well, we're talking about religion all the time. And people are going to have their own opinion. We can be intolerant. They were jealous of others who claimed that some had superior talent. Oh, my talent, my spiritual gift is much better than yours. And they were arguing about which one was the best. Well, this is much better than what you have. And instead of that, they should have been humble. They were, you're doing this all wrong. They were puffed up and proud. Sometimes you have to endure weak people. There are no members of the body of Christ that are worthless, that we need to say, oh, you're not worth even being here. We shouldn't be ready to mark people off. Boy, that 5 minutes went by really fast. All right, you get the idea. Love believes all things. Believing, hoping, enduring. This is all related. Believing the best in people, and I've talked about this before. I tend to believe the best in people unless I'm forced to believe otherwise. And sometimes, people take advantage of that. Sometimes Angie tells me I'm naive, and probably. I think I'm generally happier than if I were overly critical. If I were looking, all the time, what's your angle? Love believes all things, looks for the best in people. We give people the benefit of the doubt. Matthew 10:16, behold, I'm sending you out as sheep in the midst of wolves, so be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Again, this is a balance, and we've talked about that. We believe in others. God allows us to give our love to others. God provides a way of escape. God answers prayer. Love endures all things. And this is our bottom line. I say Christianity is not a sprint. It's a marathon. Let's end with this, 1 John 4, 7, and 8. This will sum up really the whole class. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God. Whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. He who does not love does not know God, because God is love. Make a good